Pinnacle Entertainment Group presents Hollow's Last Hope, a premiere playtest featuring Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. Fast, furious, fun, fantasy, on Kickstarter now. A plague has come to Falcon's Hollow. Death lingers in the water. 4 heroes race against time to collect ingredients for the cure. Starring Nguyen Bradley, Jordan Caves-Callarman, Leander Lacy, Diana Restrepo, and Meghan Caves.
Hello, folks. You hopefully have just finished watching the last episode of our premiere playtest of Hollow's Last Hope. I'm Donald Schepis. I'm one of the developers at Pinnacle working on Savage Pathfinder, and I am here to talk to the wonderful cast that just played through Hollow's Last Hope. So why don't we start with our intrepid GM. Why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll just go around and have everybody, so that way, we want to know where we can find you now that Hollow's Last Hope has finished, and, anything else that you want to plug.
Awesome. Well, I am Meghan Caves, and you can find me on the socials at Meghan Caves, MEGHANCAVES. The big place you can find me is on Wildcards over at Saving Throw Show, which we have a huge backlog of stuff for Wildcards. You can also catch me on the DAT Network, which is another Twitch channel along with Saving Throw Show. It does all kinds of RPGs and other things coming down the line that you're just gonna have to tune into my socials to learn about. So that's it, I think, for now, that I can think of.
All right, Diana?
I'm Diana Restrepo. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram under Diana Res3, RES3. I'm also all over the DAT Network and the Norse Foundry Twitch channel as well.
Leander?
Hi everyone, I'm Leander Lacy. I am on the board of Shiny Gardens. You can find out more about Shiny Gardens at shinygardens.org, bringing geek culture to Colorado through various cons. I'm also the Dungeon Master, Game Master for Mile High Dungeon Delvers, which is under MH Game Guys on Twitch.
Michelle?
Hello, I'm Michelle Nguyen Bradley. You can find me on the internet at I Am Chubby Bunny on Twitter and Instagram. You can also see me on Hunters Entertainment's Twitch channel on Tuesdays, as well as Official Paizo's channel on Wednesdays doing Pathfinder. You can also find me on the YouTube channel Total Nerd as one of the hosts and voiceover actors for that stuff. It's all video game content. It's very good.
Jordan?
Hi, my name is Jordan Caves-Callarman, and you can find me on Twitter at Jordan Callarman. That's Callarman, Callarman. I'm also the GM of Wildcards, which is a long-running Savage Worlds actual play live stream on the Twitch channel Saving Throw.
All right, so I think first and most important question, did you folks have fun?
Yes, of course.
Very good.
Yes.
So we saw the entire breadth of Hollow's Last Hope, so I'm going to kind of take it part by part as you would see it in the book. But before we jump into that, really quickly, so how many folks here have played a bunch of Pathfinder before?
I played a fair amount.
A little Pathfinder.
All right, and so who has Savage Worlds experience?
A little bit too.
All right. So just so that way everybody kind of knows where everybody's coming from when we're talking about the different things, right? So the first part of the book pits you as being in Falcon's Hollow, meeting some folks, potentially already having connections with other folks. And then we really get into the meat, and this is where we pick up in media res in episode 1 in the Dark Moon Vale. And it was there that you folks encountered Grung Knife Tongue, and that was kind of your first taste in Hollow's Last Hope of the Savage Worlds combat and some of the rules updates that we did. For the players, how did you think that fight went?
Gotta remember back to it.
Yeah.
Long ways
I
back.
don't remember who that is.
This was the fight where you found Jade, the little fox that was in the trap.
Oh, right.
And he was in the tree.
Oh.
Yep.
I felt conflicted by that fight because I
Yes.
think Grung tried to flee, and we ended up like cutting him down at a distance as he was trying to run away. So
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it gave me a chance. It was the first time I used my bow effectively. It's like I remember I shot him in the tree. And overall, I thought it was a really good combat. I mean, and I like that Celeste continued to work on to be named Jade. And so, yeah, I thought it was a fun combat overall.
Yeah, I think that combat, I guess from like a storytelling perspective, it was good for. I think in every RPG, the cleric, who is obviously tied to like a god, always has to have a problem with like murdering someone. So I think in this first battle, I was like, okay, what would she be doing? And I would be healing. So I just did that, focus on that, did not focus on murdering. We get to that later though. But it was, I think it was good to. Everyone kind of had a part to do, like a different thing they could do for it. So it really, I think it highlighted in the Savage World system kind of all that we could do, the like multitude of options. So
I feel like that one specifically was one of the first big moments where you guys got to kind of make character choices in the combat, kind of like what you're saying. I feel like I remember that being one of the first ones to really get to explore that.
And so that kind of leads, we call this a premiere playtest because I think, as we mentioned at the very, at some points in the last episode, you folks started with version, I think, 17 of the core Pathfinder, Savage Pathfinder rules. And then by the end of filming, we were on version 38. So you folks got to see a whole bunch of different slices, right? Like I know especially Diana's abilities with Kaira as having sneak attack, which we had to rename backstab because we use sneak attack as a term in just the sneaking rules and things like that. So kind of thinking, it's much more recent, right? The final showdown against Greypelt. How did you folks feel about your characters from the different points? Did you feel like you were always getting more powerful as we made improvements to the system? Were there any things that you lost that you really liked that you wish hadn't gone away?
Well, for me, it was, originally I had a D8 for a sneak attack die, and then it went down to a D6. So for me, that was oh man, that's less points for me.
Yeah.
That was the big thing for a rogue, I believe.
But it triggers more frequently, which is the cool part. Because before you only got that D8 die when you hit with a raise, and
that's true.
And now anytime you sneak attack, you get to add that extra D6. So
Right.
I feel like the gains are worth it.
Right. And it's the same in Pathfinder. You're going to add your extra D6, so it works out for me. I like it both ways.
Celeste?
The one change we had for the cleric at the end was that my channel healing became a no touch situation. So basically, it was regular healing, but this one I could just spit it out wherever I wanted to, and it's really great to have that for the one-time thing, and that it costs power points. I think is fine because the healer. I feel like that. When you're playing a healer, there's a lot of you play as a reaction to things. Like if someone gets hurt, then you heal them. If someone seems like they're struggling, then you give them a boon. So it was nice to kind of have, it's nice, but it makes sense for it to take points to do something like that. But also sort of like a freebie, like, oh, everyone's we are gonna be TPK producing, and I get one chance to help everybody at once, which is good because the regular healing spell is a touch and not a ranged thing. So that what I was doing in that last battle would have been hard to heal anybody because I was on purpose trying to get mushrooms and not being with everybody else that whole time. So that was interesting.
And so kind of the other thing, talking about the bookends, right? Some of you folks have played Pathfinder. I'm sure, the classes, even if you're not playing Pathfinder or playing D&D or any other system, they're all pretty iconic, right? You have an idea of what a fighter is when you're going in. So were there any points where, when you were thinking about your class, there were things that, what was your expectation of your class going in? And then how did that pan out as you were playing Hollow's Last Hope?
I actually, I had a really good time playing a sorcerer in Savage Worlds Pathfinder because I had the ability to, even though I couldn't wear armor, so I wasn't very resilient, I did have the ability to spend skill points and focus a bit more on fighting, which being a scrappy gnome wielding a quarterstaff made me pretty hard to hit, which is I feel like a nice change of pace from being a caster in other systems where you're easy to hit and damage most of the time, especially at low levels. So that was fun.
Yeah, and I can say that I chose the fighter specifically because I was new to Savage Worlds and to Pathfinder. I was like, okay, I know generally fighters are like supposed to be super easy to play with, but I would say that when I got into it, it was actually became far more complex in a good way. I felt able to do far more. I had more versatility than I thought I would. I love the 2-weapon fighting. Was actually like I've never done that before, but I thought it was really useful, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And so I think in the very beginning I didn't have the ability where I could use different combat edges per fight, and so we realized that I could do that, and so later we got that. And that's so powerful because when you level up and you just go one die up on any of your skill sets or attributes, you open up a whole bunch of combat edges. So I thought it was really cool, and I hoped people get to use that more and more frequently than I did, because I didn't get to use it as much.
Yeah, one of the things that actually from the design side we kind of were throwing around, we were originally figuring out, how do we make the fighter cool, right? Because it's very easy to be like, oh, give them a combat edge, but then they're kind of a one-trick pony. And we realized we could stealthily, sneakily make the fighter the class that you have to learn the most, right? Because you've got wild attacks and you've got your 2-weapon fighting and all those different things that are that's just how fighting works in Savage Worlds. And we realized, well, you're going to have to learn all those things, but you don't have to when you start. And now with the combat expertise and being able to look through all the edges, you have to read all the edges. And so the folks that come in that just want to learn a little bit, and now we're pushing them a little bit more. So I'm really happy to hear that was, that lined up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think as a spellcaster, it was nice to be able to do to use your skills on more than one target just by using more power points. I think that was like a pretty fair use of it, and it was really nice to not have to. What's a good analogy is like, in Final Fantasy you learn Cure and then Curaga and then like you have to keep learning the same thing over and over again, but here you just spend more because you kind of already know sort of how to do it, so just do it bigger. And I like that. I think in that way it was almost like easier because I didn't have to roll like at a higher difficulty, which I kind of expected to get like heal more people in a row. I just had to spend the power point, so that was nice. It was actually kind of easy, and it made me more confident in like just burning through those power points. Like, because if I'm definitely gonna be able to do it, why not do it all at once now? As long as I roll my magic. Well, it shouldn't happen a couple times, but I like that because it made the like combat feel like every turn felt more meaningful. So I like that. It's good.
I have to say, I really like also the gang up aspect, where in Pathfinder, you have to position yourself exactly in the right spot to get the flanking bonus, where in Savage Worlds, all you have to do is make sure someone is right near your target. And like, to me, I really like that, especially if you're a frontline fighter.
Me too. I've
Really
always
like
liked
that a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
I enjoy that the most.
Well, and speaking about that gang up bonus, that kind of leads into that final fight against Grey Pal. I imagine, Megan, you got a lot of enjoyment out of that with having 8 wolves to jump on all of the players.
Yeah, you guys are lucky that there is a limit of +4 being the most, because otherwise that would have been insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because it allows you as a GM or a player, if you're dealing with that, to think tactically and be able to make things slightly better by going, ooh, I thought of this, I can be over here, or I can stand close to this person, or I can whatever. And it just, I don't know, I feel like while there are options for that in Pathfinder and D&D and other games, like Diana was saying, the fact that you kind of have to be positioned is fine, but it also, sometimes you're like, but that's so tedious. Can I just be there, like, and get into the action? And so it is nice also on the GM side, especially when you're trying to maneuver so many different creatures at once. It's a lot easier to keep track of that way.
Well, it allows you to fight tactically, even if you're doing theater of the mind. Like, you don't have to have miniatures out in order to be able to utilize the gang up bonus and those tactical things, because you don't have to be exactly positioned, which I think gives a lot more freedom to many different styles of gameplay.
Well, it's easier for me to keep in my head, because even if there's a map, it's just it's less to have to go, hang on, let me look. Oh, okay, I'm in the right spot, which is helpful.
I will say, so the original version of Formation Fighter, which I forget what we called it, but we were trying to figure out how do we make you get this horde of goblins in the start of Rise of the Rune Lords. We were trying to figure out how do we make those goblins way more lethal. And you folks are lucky that we didn't go with the original draft, which was it also allowed you to add that bonus to damage. Because it was a pretty close thing in one of the versions of the Greypeld fight.
Oh my goodness.
That'd have been intense.
That would have hurt a lot.
Yeah.
We would have needed Celeste a lot more.
Yeah, I would say that like after I cast protection, like it felt really OP that like no one could get touched. I was like, is this?
Yeah.
Protection's tough, yeah.
Getting a raise on it and giving us +4 to our that's really big.
So kind of talking about those two versions, right? So I don't think we called it out in the recordings for those fights, but the reason we did two versions is the core rules went through a bunch of revision, and so did Hall's Last Hope. And spoiler alert for the folks at home, you're probably going to have a more difficult fight when you play it because every time we do another playtest, we get to see what you folks did. It's a different experience. Other playtests are more tactical. You folks are all theater of the mind, and we love seeing that spread, and that means that it's going to really twist the knife. So if one of your characters dies, maybe you know who to blame. Not really. Don't do that. Go complain to your GM, not to these guys' GM. But so we went from version 12 of the rules to version 17. Certainly the first version also just had that insane amount of luck of two players drawing those double jokers. What were your thoughts after having gone through both fights, and what were the things that you liked from one and the other?
I mean, I have to say, from someone who typically GMs Savage Worlds, it was very satisfying for me that we were able to take out the big bad in one round of combat, because I have had that happen to me as a GM so many times with just fantastically lucky die rolls that it felt nice to be on the other side of it for once. Because I felt like that the first go on the fight, we felt badass. Like that felt like the fruition of all of our journeying and our new abilities and everything. Not that it wasn't fun to struggle more, but sometimes it's just really cool to be like, oh yeah, lucky shot.
Yeah.
I prefer the second fight because it would be real. It's more realistic fighting all those creatures with only the four of us. Even though I want to be a badass.
Yeah, I think in the first one I did feel like we were pretty OP for level 2 characters. And the build up to that, I did know. I mean, obviously, I realized we were very lucky pulling those two jokers that gave us all the bennies, and all, that was insane. So we were, of course, gonna one shot all the fewer enemies too, since there's more of us than there are of them. But in the second one, I think because the stakes felt more, we felt more worried about stuff. We were like, I'm running out of power points. Our health is going. Like we were worried as characters and players, and I think that was, it made it more dramatic and more fun. And I think that's people expect from Savage Worlds. I think is kind of that. The stakes are a little higher. Like you could die at any fight, not just the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the first version, it didn't feel as amazing because we just killed it so quickly. But I think in a long-term story, that actually kind of works out okay, because then the heroes think that they're invincible, right? So then the next fight, like, oh, we got this. We've already cut off the head of Greypelt so easily. Whereas the second one felt like a one-shot final battle, right? Like, oh, this is it. This is the culmination. Get into it. So yeah, I think either would have worked even for a longer story, but just kind of pointing out that even the first one, the quick death, could work to the advantage of the game master long term.
For sure, I've seen that happen.
It happens the other way around too. So.
It does both, yeah.
Well, and Megan, as the person who had to have all of those lovely wolves you were controlling that weren't doing anything wrong at all, slaughtered both times, how was that from your perspective?
Well, it was definitely interesting from doing both of them, because I could kind of see, especially over running this entire thing, I was like, my players are so like they can handle one creature pretty well, especially between the 4 of them. And if there's only 1 or 2, if the luck doesn't turn in my favor really fast as far as the enemy goes, these guys could take them out. So it was interesting having both, because I feel like being able to have like a larger number, the number is what really overwhelmed the players, and that's what really upped the difficulty. So there was a lot more potential for it to tilt either way. Whereas the first go, there is an element of whenever you're telling a story, if you want it to feel dramatically meaningful, that if you're stacking yourself with, I've got one guy who's really tough, as long as he gets the opportunity to do this one thing, there's a lot of potential for that not to happen. So
Right.
It's a little more work on my end to go, okay, this wolf who was really scary, who just tripped over his own 2 feet and fell, face first into a sword, is still the story. The important thing to learn, there's just a lot more back end work for me to do. Whereas with the more to maneuver, even though it's like, oh no, there are more people I have to think of. The really nice thing in Savage Worlds, like when you have a group of wolves like that, it's like, yeah, here are their stats, and they all move together for the most part. So it's really not so complicated as long as you don't have too many different things. And it's kind of nice because it's not a whole lot, it's not too taxing on my brain, but it also gives them a bigger challenge, and there's more kind of flow within the probability of which direction it's gonna fall. So personally, I think it's fun both ways, but in some ways it's easier to have more on my part.
So to wrap up, so thinking about the over, the last couple of sessions that you folks have played, right? Starting in Falcon's Hollow, going into the Dark Moon Vale, coming across Jade and taking out Grung Knife Tongue, getting jumped by the Tatzel Worm at the Elder Oak, trying to not get swallowed up by Uzmilla's Cauldron in the Hag's Hut, all the way to, working your way through the ruined monastery past, the giant spider and the dwarf skeletons, severing poor Girdle Kep's arm, and then paying him hush money.
Not our shining moment as a team.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
All the way to taking out a Great Pelt. What's the moment that for each of you sticks out the most as kind of being, either the most fun, or the moment where you felt like you were playing, like you felt like that was the best moment for your character, or the most exemplifying moment for your character? I know it's a hard question.
That's a hard question.
And it's also like, how many weeks apart
Yeah.
are these sessions?
Yeah, I want to say that last episode because it's the most fresh in my mind, but I think it was cool to see, again, as a player, as a cleric, there's a thing called a sin. So if you actively kill something or don't heal someone that is in need, you your power suffers, which is, I think, a gameplay mechanic in a lot of other RPGs. But you kind of have to roleplay that, and for me, it was I had to find a reason to flip over, every time. And that last time, after having just told Kaizen to take it down to a 7, and then be like, bring it back to a 10,
Yeah.
it was very satisfying. It was a nice little callback, but it also, I think, plot wise, like, oh, this was the reason there was a problem in Hollow's Hope at all. So that's why I'm gonna get mad and want to kill something now. And that was really fun. Like, just, it kind of felt like a culmination of like everything we've been doing up to that point. Yelling that out was good. good feelings.
Yeah, I would say probably. I mean, there's so many. There were so many. But I would say that in the witch's hut, and thinking about Kaizen's impulsive and his desire to grab the twig out of the mud to kind of see what it was, right? Like, there was no reason. He was just impulsive and couldn't help it. So he just grabbed it, and then now he has to fight his cauldron. And even with the fight with the cauldron, I really enjoyed, just to kind of give credit to Celeste, when she empowered my sword for the first time, and just like and the effects of what it looked like, and then being able to like basically cut this thing in half after that. That like was a really cool, like, that for me, that was awesome because it was like co-op, and I love like real good co-op, and that felt like co-op right there.
I mean, I used this, I think, in multiple instances, but I really liked the versatility that cantrips afforded me as a caster, especially when it came to using spells for tests or supports, or like being able to utilize my largely offensive skill set in like supportive or cooperative ways. I don't think I did much of that today or in our last session, but yeah, I did have fun doing that in a couple of the other fights.
I will say also from the design side, you folks using the cantrips was a wonder to see, because that's exactly how we envision people using it, and the fact that it worked out like that. You don't always get a design where the way people use it is the way you thought, but it was perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
I am always looking for new like Savage Worlds tools to add to my kit, and cantrips are definitely one that I found to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a really easy way to add flavor, like specific to your character, to the spell, and also it makes a lot of sense, because why would I know how to like heal someone from almost dying but not know how to like turn on a candle? That doesn't, like, why do I need to learn a special spell for that? I must have picked it up somewhere along the way in wizard school. So that was, I mean, it makes sense from a story standpoint too.
Wizard school.
Wizard school.
For me, I like taking the connection of being emotional towards each fight. So, for instance, the 3 dwarves in the jail cell, how it affects Kyra in that moment and how she fights because of it. And then the last fight with Grey Pelt, when I took the wild attack, why she took wild attack, because he's been her enemy all this time. And I really like that in terms of fighting.
Yeah.
I guess that's really cool that you can actually play emotions, and there's a thing for it. So there's wild attack for your emotion, which is really
Right.
crazy.
That's, yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I tried to kind of make Grey Pelt more your specific enemy, Kyra, since that was kind of a part of your character, and also I tried to tie him. He doesn't in the story, at least whenever I read it originally, version 19, the one that I base most things on. Grey Pelt has nothing to do with the poisoning of the town. I wanted to tie that together to add that little extra oomph.
I like that
in there. Thanks. So just so you guys know in your description of it, yeah, that's part of that.
Yeah.
Megan, did you have a favorite moment?
I mean, I really liked the Witch's Hut as well, because that one, more than any of the other elements for me, really leaned into the kind of like creepy, weird horror. And you know what's interesting? So on the DAT network, we are doing the AP Reign of Winter, and you fight. I fought that cauldron in a witch's hut in that first edition Pathfinder adventure path. So it was really, I was like, I recognize this. It was interesting to be able to have experienced it kind of both in Pathfinder and in Savage Worlds. And I just think it's so clever and interesting, and I just like the atmosphere of that. So while that particular fight, you didn't get to see the cauldron swallow anyone whole, which it can do, it was still just a fun atmosphere, and I loved that it got triggered if they messed with anything. So it's just essentially an alarm system. I thought that was fun. The other thing that I enjoyed in general, the monastery is rich with information, which, since none of you guys could read Dwarven, you didn't get to learn, that
That was kind of a bummer. I wanted to know what was going on there.
The monks there basically turned evil and became evil and did all these horrible evil things. And the skeletons you fought were the ones who refused to turn evil. So there's a lot of that kind of information that was in there that I would have loved. Like, you could create a whole story around that monastery. So the richness of all of that was really interesting. I just would have liked to have been able to dive into it more and make the story more about that. But, that's for the next time.
Yeah, that would have been way different if you would have told me that the dwarves were not evil or didn't want to be evil at first. Then there would have been a lot of conflict with me.
They turned from Torag to Droskar for the most part, and that's what a lot of the information you guys couldn't read said. So
That was their mistake.
Shouldn't have written in Dwarven.
And actually, that brings up a good point, because I'm kind of curious what you folks think, because you know, certainly, you know, back when Hollow's Last Hope came out in 2007, the much like the more standard for the hobby was very much the, you know, going room by room, the dungeon crawl, right? And that's also the type of gameplay that Pathfinder does so well. And you folks kind of still went room by room and cleared out everything. And I think everything except like 1 or 2 encounters in the entire monastery you hit. How much was that a conscious decision on your part as players? And then you can't really answer this part, but I'm curious on Megan's thoughts of how much was that Megan leading you folks through, so that way you got to see all the cool encounters.
I mean, I think I won't speak for everyone else, but once I realized that mushrooms could potentially be in any room, it seemed like it was the thing that made the most sense to do, especially coming from a character perspective. Like, I don't want to go any deeper into this place than I have to. So can we find everything up here? And then obviously we couldn't. But that was what motivated that for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we wouldn't have followed the wolf into the scary hole. Like, as a character, like, why would I mean, like, the whole bat thing was like, you know, we can just close the store and problem solved, you know?
No bats.
Yeah, so I think that made sense character-wise to go to the easy rooms. And then once the, goblin, what is he, or kobold was like, oh, our master's over here. I'm like, well, let's just not go over there. Can we just not do that for a while?
Just ignore that.
Yeah, didn't work, but...
Yeah, my main thing was protecting my friends by making sure that no one could attack us from behind, and so there was no way I was going down when I hadn't even seen, like, there could have been 30 enemies up top, so I was like, this isn't going to be good if we go down.
Sure.
Yeah, as a character and as a fighter, you want to clear out every single room so no one attacks you from behind. Agreed, 100%.
Right. Maybe if we were all rogues, it'd be different.
Indeed.
Well, and jumping the spellcasters from behind is certainly one of the big tool sets, one of the big tools in the Savage Worlds tool set.
Indeed, yeah. This was an interesting challenge for me because I have only really GM'd Savage Worlds. I've done some others, but never like Pathfinder or D&D. And I am not a rules and mechanic min-max player or GM. I'm very like story based, so it was interesting. This was so different from a lot of the plot points that, like the Rippers one that I've done before, because those are often like, here's a story moment and here's also a combat, and those it's different, whereas this was more like combat to combat. So it was, my brain was like, whoa. And also it was interesting, the dynamics, like the Savage Worlds combats are very interesting. Pathfinder creates these combats. It's like, this guy does this and he does this really special thing and he looks like this and this is his thoughts. And, you know, there's a lot of really interesting stuff there that you can kind of pull from and create from, which is cool, but it takes a different kind of way of thinking of it. So my brain was a little like, okay, hang on, let me think. But in regards to the monastery specifically, what I thought was interesting about the fact that, yeah, it's kind of a basic dungeon crawl of like, every room you go to, there's a thing in there might be something you can find. But had you guys gone down to Grey Pelt originally, which he did try to do anyway, he basically tries to weaken you guys by trying to persuade you to go and like fight all these other things so that he can keep his special mushroom treat. So either way, there was sort of an impetus in the building of the monastery for you guys to explore everything. So I did try to kind of be like, hey, go over here, because and also as a GM, I think this is very common. You're like, well, that room's cool. I want them to go into that room and have that happen. So either way, I was really going to try to get you guys to go everywhere, but you could have literally directly gone down to Grey Pelt and gotten almost enough mushrooms to be able to head back. So it could have gone either way.
On that note, playing Pathfinder for many years, like, that's what they want you to. They want you to go to every single room so you don't miss out on a clue. So that's how I've always, that's the first thing I was thinking was, okay, got to clear out every single room, because that's what the GM wants you to do.
All right.
Oh, I was going to say it is interesting because that's a very different. That in my mind, starting with 3.5 D&D and having played Pathfinder and all of that, that's the way you play those games. And then jumping into Savage Worlds, you can play it that way, but you also Savage Worlds is just kind of like, how do you want to play it? And so for me, I was like, and so it was interesting kind of going back and be like, oh, okay, this is like Pathfinder. Okay, so I reset my mind into this mindset, which was interesting.
So I'm sure a question a lot of folks are going to be curious about. Where do you think the stories for your characters go next? Right? Are they, are they sick of each other and they want to get away? Are they going to stick together as a group?
I feel like we would all stay together because we all kind of tangentially knew each other as characters before this started, and now we're like basically, we've been through the trenches together. So I feel like we'd stick together, get new adventures. I think Celeste would try to push to do like outside of the town adventures, like to travel. Yeah, I don't know, because I feel like I already saved this town. Time for the next one. Time to, I guess, what was it, like, I'm the chosen one, so I have to keep going.
I'd probably be giving lessons to Diffel about not giving away 20 gold to every single person he's trying to persuade.
Oh.
But I don't need it, though.
I know, but, I'm your big sister, so... Oh, you're my companion, was it what we're saying?
I believe I was your familiar.
You're my familiar.
Yeah,
You're my pet, yes. I would stick with the group. I'd stick with the group, but I would also stay outside of town with Diffel just to make sure everything is okay out there.
Diffel would also stay with the group. I mean, it was his dream that brought him to this place, and he was just waiting for a moment of need, and it came. And I think that he sees a lot of potential in what this group can accomplish together. So yeah, I would absolutely be willing to go on more adventures.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for Kaizen. I think Kaizen would begin to start to get the group to go out into the woods on a weekly basis to spar with each other, to learn how to better use our abilities together and work effectively. So that would be something Kaizen would be very interested in. As a desire, knowing that one day he's going to have to leave this group to go back to his village, and so he wants them to be as strong as possible before he does that.
Unless we move with you.
That's true.
I will say, were I to continue to GM this group, what I really like as a GM, because what I like as a player is to feel like my character is the chosen one. My character is the one that has to save the world, or I like those big dramatic, like epic feeling movie cinematic type thing in whatever world we're set in. So I would probably lean into each of these guys' backstories and try to find adventures that would lead them down those ways to, like, okay, let's deal with Kaira's background. Let's deal with Celeste coming up with questioning maybe her faith in her deity. Let's explore Diffel's backstory. Let's go back to Kaizen's village and deal with the grief of the soulbound not being there. I love to dive into that stuff and make it dramatically and emotionally important for the players and for the characters, because that to me is what's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you said, you are the GM, so do you think these folks advance at the end of Paula's Last Hope?
Oh, for sure they would. I mean, they already advanced once. I mean, you guys either very adeptly and quickly took out Greypelt, or you fought hard to take out Greypelt.
Yeah.
Or both. So.
Which one's Diffel's dream? We might never know.
The fox was the real one. The other two were the dreams.
So, if you folks had another advance, is there anything in your characters that you were, you saw when you were looking through the rules of an edge or a attribute bump that you were super interested in?
I would do sorry.
Oh, we all went at once. Go for it. Kaira.
I would do the double weapon fighting as well, like Kaizen. Definitely double weapon fighting as a rogue. Celeste?
Thank you for throwing. I think I would pick an offensive thing. Like maybe I've learned from my group that sometimes you have to attack and not just react.
Oh.
So I think I would either pick like I don't know, maybe like, but in like an indirect way. So I think I would take like Beast Friend, because like someone else would be doing the attacking. That makes a little more sense, like flavor wise.
Is that a good influence or a bad influence? So you're like,
Yeah.
I should start hurting people.
Maybe I just want to, have a swarm of bees helping me out all the time. I don't know. That's my new thing.
Oh God.
Bees!
Swarms are the worst.
Yes. Oh.
I'd probably take the new power edge. I definitely want a couple more tools to play with as a sorcerer. So I'm not sure offhand which powers I would go with, but I'd always looking to expand the utility belt.
Come on, you want puppet.
You take Puppet as a novice character, Megan.
Yeah, I would say for me, so last time I bumped my vigor up to D8. I would probably bump my vigor up again if possible, because I want to be able to, again, protect my friends and be, if necessary, jump into the middle of battle, and I don't want to die quickly, as well as it opens up all the combat edges that require a D10 for vigor.
Nice.
That I can choose from for fun.
Yeah.
All right. So that's all the questions I have. Does anybody have any parting thoughts?
This was fun. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Had a blast.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
You folks were a delight to watch. Megan, you did an amazing job as a GM, and it was a treat to see you folks playing through the stuff that we were designing and having fun with it. And so there's just great job all around.
Thank
you.
Yay, thank
you so much.
Well, for you folks watching at home, depending on when this launches, you can either head over to Kickstarter and check out the Pathfinder for Savage Worlds Kickstarter and take a look at all the cool different awards that you can get there. Otherwise, go and find these folks on social media and see what other cool stuff they're doing. And you can always come back here to either the Twitch channel or the YouTube or whatever platform you're currently seeing this on and find more Savage Worlds content. Thank you.
Yay.
Yeah.